We're back, just local, and I've got a very special guest today. When we do our research into these guests arriving, we obviously like to see what they're up to, what we can talk about, and I was blown away with how much this lady does. So we're going to be talking to Stef Bennett from Bennetts Farm, and we'll go into the details of Bennetts Farm and where it came from, but there is a long, long list. This lady is superwoman. And so we're going to find out all about that today and how she manages to do all this with children. So Stef, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me, Matt.
So I think it was 1918, was it? The Bennetts Farm began?
So 1919, yeah.
19, so, close.
Yeah, my husband's fifth generation. Robert Bennett stemmed from Cornwall. He wasn't one of the oldest children, so he wasn't inheriting his farm down in Cornwall, and he ventured to London, to Tottenham, to make his fortune, and he ended up selling milk in Tottenham. Made some money doing that, and then came out to look for somewhere to move in the countryside, and moved out to Worcester and bought Manor Farm back in 1919.
Got you. So Tristan's there, and obviously your family are there, and also Tristan's dad still working there as well?
Well, so I'm not from around here at all, actually. I grew up down in Bucks.
Okay.
So Tristan and I met at university, and I've slowly been sucked into into the farm since then.
Got you. And we'll get into what days look like, but you've been there since 2012, I gather?
Yes. When did I move up to... I moved up to Worcester in 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, Tristan started working full-time on the farm about a year before that, about 2013.
Got you.
Yeah, 2012, 2013.
Got you. And there's a long list of things that have happened since you've joined then. So the glamping, is that part of your influence, was it?
Yeah, but that was mainly Tristan. He spent some time before. He's a civil engineer by profession.
Yeah.
And before he came back to the farm, he did a stint working for an international management consultancy. And one of the places he was posted, he went to some great places like South Africa and things like that, but he was in the middle of nowhere in Bangladesh for a while, which was very quite lonely.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And he ended up spending his time coming up with his first diversification plan, which was Worcester glamping.
Got you.
He knew full well that going into the family farm was going to be difficult financially, and how important it is to have diversifications. And the glamping just emerged as an idea of something to use. It's it was an unused area of the farm, but it was a great location. It's one of the only bits of the farm that doesn't flood.
Right.
So that's quite important.
Yes.
But it's a little area, a little paddock up there that is great for the glamping site. And he started designing the yurts. And then when he came home that winter, he started building the yurts. I spent my Christmas break in between my job helping to make these yurts as well. And yeah, so that's where it all began. So we were one of the first glamping sites. We were quite early on in farms diversification into glamping.
Yeah.
Since then, a lot more people do it. But I think we still are very unique because we're so close to a city.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of glamping sites, you have to go into the middle of nowhere. You know, most farms are in the middle of nowhere. But for us, we've got this wonderful location where we're walking distance along the Severn into Worcester, which is really lovely.
And how many does it accommodate then, the glamping?
So we now have 10 yurts. We started off with 5, but with that, it was very popular, so we built another 5. So we've got 10, and they each sleep 4 people comfortably. So they've got real bed, log burner, fairy lights. So it's a real cosy staycation for people. And we have people from Worcester and Malvern coming to stay.
Really?
I think it highlights that you don't need to go far away to get a break. You just need to get away from home and out of your normal routine. So it's great that we have people locally come to stay with us.
Fab. And for people that are watching or listening, whereabouts is Bennetts Farm, just to kind of put it on the map for people?
So anyone who drives along the main routes into Worcester from Malvern will know the Powick Chimney, the big old mill there. So our fields are essentially there. We're the Worcester side of the River Team.
Got you.
So those are our fields there.
Okay, super duper. And it's worth visiting because there's a lot more things that go on at this place. So we'll talk about dairy farming in a little while, but let's talk about your rustic cafe that you have there.
Yep.
And you've also got, is that Bennett's Willow Barn?
That's Bennett's Willow Barn.
Yes.
Yeah. So Bennett's Willow Barn is a farm cafe and events venue. So we have a farm cafe open every day, 9:30 till 3:30. And we also do all sorts of different events. So you can hire us for parties, like birthday parties, baby showers. We have the weddings as well, where we make use of our yurt marquee and garden. And And then we do some bigger events. We did our first pumpkin patch this year, teaming with the farm as well. Bonfire night, which was fantastic, real big success. We're doing that again this year. And this coming August bank holiday, we are teaming up the Sealed Knot, which is Britain's biggest reenactment society, and they're doing their 2-day big weekend on our farm. So in the paddock right next to the Willow Barn garden, in the field there, and that's going to be really exciting. So it's going to be a full-on Civil War reenactment with cavalry charge and all sorts.
Goodness.
Artillery guns.
How many are they expecting to?
Hundreds. Yeah, it's going to be really exciting.
That's
and of course,
amazing.
it's on the site where the real battles of the Civil War were fought. Worcester was the first and last battles of the Civil War, on the old Powick Bridge. So it's really exciting for them to be able to come in and...
Be incredible for them to be there, exactly,
on the actual site, So
Wow.
that's exciting.
I said to you when you came in, I do feel like I know you because I follow you on social media, and you were very good at making sure people know what's going on. It's got to be said. We will talk about your social media and how much you do in that. But going back to this rustic cafe, there's also children's play area.
Yep, so we've got a little play area. We have some pygmy goats that live there, but they're currently having their winter holiday in the farm because their pen floods. It gets very soggy in the winter, so they move up to the calves to live with the calves on the farm over winter. Lovely little play area. The idea was that it's just somewhere nice and relaxed for people with a family to go.
Yep.
I guess I was our ideal client, really, in a mum with young kids, dogs, somewhere you can go that's got a friendly, welcoming, good quality food.
Yes.
All the food we source is as local as possible, and it's homemade, so decent quality food, in a friendly, welcoming environment.
Brilliant.
And making use of the outdoors as well.
Did you say you're open every single day, is it?
Yes.
Oh, fair play. A lot of work going on into that then. So other diversification then that came from, I guess, you and Tristan. Dairy farming, has that always been the case, but the delivery started up in 2020, is that right?
Yes, so the Bennetts Dairies was the big milk provider in Worcestershire up until 1995 when the main dairy closed.
Yeah.
So up until that point, the what is now the Manor Farm pub, the Ego restaurant, that's where the old dairy was. And Bennetts Dairies bought milk in from all the local farms as well as using their own milk. But thanks to the supermarkets and people's consumer habits changing, in 1995 the dairy closed.
Yeah.
And so we've just been a dairy farm producing milk and sending it off to a national dairy as most other people do since then. In 2020, we'd gone through the process of planning application for the Willow Barn. We knew we needed to be setting up our own pasteurising unit and facility to be able to provide our own milk in our own cafe. That was part of the plan. And so we'd been toying with the idea of a milk round. And then COVID hit and we thought, well, if we're going to do it, now's our chance to
Great
do
idea,
it, because we'll be able to springboard off the bat that people really needed that service in March 2020. So we had a Facebook page for the farm that Tristan had set up a few years before for selling beef boxes. So it had a small following, very small, did hardly anything on it. And I put a post on there just saying, would anyone be interested in a local milk round? And it went viral. I remember at the time it was like over 60,000 people saw it, which in 2020 was huge.
Yes.
I was like, okay.
There is a demand.
There is a demand. You have to take it with a huge spoonful of salt, those kind of things, because often people say they want to do something, but then they actually don't commit. But so that gave us the impetus to go ahead and do it.
Yep.
And so in the next 6 weeks, we went from that idea to rolling out with our first milk on a vintage milk float we'd bought off eBay. So Tristan designed we set up a dairy in a shipping container. So he sorted out all the kit.
Yep.
I did liaising with the health and safety side of it, and the customer side. I found a system for us to use for customers to be able to order on the website and set up regular deliveries and things and pay online. And then I had the difficult task of working out the routes, which was actually quite tricky because you've got to do it as efficiently as possible, especially on a very slow old float. And so that day back, was it the 11th of May, I think, in 2020, I rolled out of the farm at 3 o'clock in the morning with a few crates of milk that Tristan had pasteurised and bottled the day before.
Amazing.
And we've grown slowly from then. And we have a lot of customers who were with us right from those first couple of weeks, still with us now.
Really?
Which is really lovely.
And there's a bit of product placement for people watching. So we have is this the type of bottle that you're out delivering?
No, we don't deliver in glass bottles at the moment, but really soon we are in the process of building a new dairy unit that's bigger, not in a shipping container, it's a real building.
Yeah.
And we're getting the kit that will enable us to deliver in glass bottles, because you need the washers, the fillers, it's a lot of expensive kit involved. The electricians are putting in the electrics at the moment.
Okay.
So that's exciting. We're getting the kit delivered very soon. So at the moment we don't deliver in glass. It was a price thing for us. The poly bottles we could get hold of quickly and easily, and they are fully recyclable, but we know that the kind of people who want a home milk delivery often want them in glass bottles.
Yeah.
So
you can try and meet that market.
Looking to that, and it's just not something we've been able to do financially, but we've taken the plunge and are doing that. And these are the bottles that you can buy in the Willow Barn. So Bennetts Willow Barn, you can buy our milk and milkshakes to take home, which a growing number of people are doing. And again, we have lots of regulars coming in every week to get their milk and take it home. You're
quite unique, obviously, because I know where you're kind of located now. You're close to Lower Wick, aren't you? So you've got a lot of residential addresses just across the road, really, nearby.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's partly why we always had thought about doing a milk round, as more and more people were getting more conscious about buying direct from farms and thinking about where their food comes from.
Yeah.
It had always been on our mind, and the fact that we are on the edge of a city is what encouraged us to do it. I think if you're a typical dairy farm in the middle of nowhere, doing a milk round is a lot harder.
Of course it would be.
Because you've got so far to travel to get to people. But saying that, we drive past thousands of homes every day when we do the milk round, and we only deliver to a fraction of them. So there's definitely room for growth.
So let's just make sure people do know what your social media handles are. So you've got Bennetts Farm and it's Bennetts Willow Barn as well. Those are the two?
Yeah, so Bennetts Farms.
Yes, Farms with an S.
Yeah, and Bennetts Willow Barn. Yeah, so they're the...
Super. So jump on there and I'm sure you'll be able to find out more about this. Beef boxes, beef production.
Yeah.
So you've got over 200 cows at any one time, is that right?
So we have 240 cows in our herd. So that's the cows who are producing milk. You're in a 2-year cycle for a cow because she needs to have a baby every year to produce milk. After about a year, her body will stop producing milk.
Okay.
So they need to have calves. And so that's where beef production is so integrally linked with dairy, because the cow has her calf, and then what are you going to do with that calf? I mean, there's been huge advances in science in recent years where we now use sexed semen with our best Holsteins. So we've got a 9 in 10 chance of getting a girl out of those cows.
Wow.
So we don't get many boys.
No.
Most of our cows will be produced with a view to going into our herd, but that will be too many. We don't need 240 new cows in the herd every year because they obviously live several years producing milk. So the ones that we don't put into the dairy herd will go for beef. So at we produce beef out of them at nearly 2.5 years old.
Right.
Anything you buy in the supermarket is going to be less than 18 months old.
Right.
And it's that longer growing period.
Eat more grass. And,
that's what gives beef a much, much better taste.
And so they can come and collect this from you, or do you have a facility to collect, or is it more an order online and gets delivered? How does it work?
So our milk round customers can get it delivered with their milk.
There we are, there's a reason.
And then anyone else is able to collect it from the Willow Barn. We have looked at doing some courier services with the beef, but at the moment I sell out locally. It's kind of like it seems something to look into that I don't really need. It seems an added complication. We don't have beef available all the time. We tend to do one every few months, but it is something that, again, we want to get into a regular pattern.
I've got a name for it. If you're going to get mopeds, they could say just meat on them instead of just eat. That's a rubbish joke. Anyway, moving forward, school trips as well. You do school trips to the farm?
Yeah, so we do school trips. So we can provide free school trips for Ofsted registered providers, and that's getting funding from the government to allow us to do that. And so we started doing those last year, and we had fantastic feedback from people. Really, the kids absolutely loved it, and it was really eye-opening for the teachers as well. The teachers really enjoyed it as well. So we bring them onto the farm, we get 10 cows into the milking parlour. We're very confused because they're not normally milked in the middle of the day, but it means the kids get to see them being milked, and then there's that realisation that milk doesn't come from a supermarket shelf.
No.
It comes out of an animal that's been looked after. So we walk through the sheds, they get to see and touch the food that they're eating. We then go and see the calves. And I did some meet the calf experiences this summer for the first time as well, where I let people climb into the pens with the calves and feed them bottles, get really hands-on.
Yeah,
I think it's really important to us to get people onto the farm, because so few people have that connection between where their food actually comes from, and by getting people on the farm, that's how hopefully we can keep that connection alive.
These city schools are not far away from any of them, I suppose, so that makes a lot of sense. Talking about kids then, what's the size of your family? How many of you got? How do you have time to have children to look after at the same time with all of this going on? But what are the age ranges?
So the oldest is nearly 7 and the youngest is nearly 2.
Okay.
So I had 4 babies in 5 years.
Good effort.
Yeah.
Whilst a lot was going on clearly as well.
Yeah, we were very busy.
Yeah. That'll pay dividends though. Another 5 years they'll be helping.
The 2 are starting to get useful now. They can help carry things. And
Good.
Yeah, they're pretty useful. But they love getting stuck in. Farming is all about, it's a family business.
Yeah.
And they have spent their life following us around, watching us, learning from us. Their knowledge about how things work is incredible. And it's great to have them helping you, I think, and learning alongside you.
But I watched a video where you and Tristan were talking, and Tristan's, is it up at 4 o'clock, is it?
Oh yeah, he's up at 4 o'clock every day, yeah.
And gets every other weekend off, but other than that it's
and even then, every other weekend off, if we're at home, he's out checking things. If something breaks, he's often the one to go and fix it. When it was that really cold weather, the weekend after the floods, when everything was frozen. Frozen. The cows had no water, so he was out there, spent an hour and a half trying to get the water going back on to make sure they had their water.
It's amazing. We take it for granted. Obviously, you guys don't, but we take it for granted how much work goes into getting that milk to the table or getting that beef to the plate. So we're going to talk about your social media in a minute, but just so people know the size of this place, again, watch the video, saw Tristan talking about how many acres you farm, and then you're also, so you freehold a certain number of acres, and then you also leasehold another bit, so you rent a section as well.
Yeah.
Is this, you've got the main bridge coming out of kind of Powick or coming back towards the motor. Are you the areas to the side of that? Is that anything?
Yeah, so we're the Worcester side of the River Team.
Okay, yeah.
Anything the other side, the Malvern side, the Powick side, that's not us, we're this side.
So we realise that a lot of that does flood, and you mentioned flooding a couple of times. So how often are you impacted? What's the...
Oh, regularly now.
Yeah.
I mean, as I say, I moved up to Worcester in about 2014, and I would not very often see flooding. But now we're getting flooded multiple times, and a winter, and it's also, it just stays for longer.
Yeah.
You talk to anyone who's been on the farm for years, and it would, when it did occasionally flood, it would come on and then it'd be gone in a few days, but it lingers. I mean, we spent so much of last winter underwater, and the damage it does to the fields is it has a long-term economic impact because it kills the grass underneath.
Yeah.
Which means we then can't get the cows out grazing again until that grass we've reseeded, which is obviously additional cost.
Sure.
So you have to get the fields reseeded, get the grass growing again to a level where it's good for the cows nutritionally, which means we then have to keep them in the sheds for longer. So it's more feeding them inside, keeping them on straw. It's all additional cost.
Yeah.
So it does have a big impact on us.
Goodness gracious. I hope everyone's going to start supporting your business after this, because it seems like there's something for everyone. If you just want to go for a coffee, you've got somewhere to go to. Yeah. But you're big on social media. I mentioned it. So is that something that you just realised? Obviously, there's everything that the farm's doing. You've got a lot to talk about, and there's a lot that people could come and enjoy with you and obviously purchase from you. But what made you go, I'm going to make sure people know about this? What gave you the little kick to get on social media as much as you do?
Well, I think I fell into social media during I had proper maternity leave with my first baby, so had a lot of time.
But that was nice.
And spent some time on social media. It was a real lifesaver for me. A husband who was busy working a lot of the time. I formed connections on there with people who I call my friends. Even today, and. From there, I realised how important social media is in developing the story behind a business. And so especially with farming, I've mentioned how we feel it's so important for people to see that connection between what goes on behind the scenes to make your food and put food on your table. And I think social media is a fantastic way to do that. And it's free. It's your time that you invest in it. Obviously, you can pay to boost things, but generally, you can get a good social media following just from posting things that people are interested in. And it's not a case of always posting a selling post. It's the story behind the business that people are interested in, and as a farming family, I think people people find that quite interesting to see what goes on behind the scenes to make, behind the scenes of the farm and also the Willow Barn, what we get up to.
Well, I must admit, it's when you're out walking, I think you're often
Yes.
you've got your phone up and you're ready to go. And I think it is brilliant because I've heard things that we've talked about today, but I've actually already heard these before because I've followed and I've listened to those posts and things like that. And it's really important to get that engagement, I think. And for anyone that is watching or listening to this, look for Stef and look at what they do. We'll put the links within our show notes, so you'll actually find the Instagram channels and on Facebook also. But it does hopefully give you a bit of inspiration if you're kind of wondering with your own business, should you do something, then take inspiration from Stef because she does a great job with it. It's, you don't mind me saying, it's not all like with the lighting in the right place or you have to do for this. It's just as and when.
Absolutely.
Get your camera, post it.
It's real, I think. And that's something that I learned doing social media for myself originally, is that people like real stories. People like to see the challenges as well as the good things. And I think we do try and share that as well.
Yeah.
It's not all the glossy stuff. There's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes.
Without a doubt.
And that, I think that's really important for building that connection with your customer, that people hopefully can appreciate what we're doing. We don't get things right all the time. Of course, we make mistakes sometimes, but we try really hard. And I think people like to see that realism behind it. I mean, I was doing some work in the cafe a couple of weeks ago and a lady came up to me and she said, I recognise you own here, don't you? And I said, oh, yes. And she said, you've been a lifesaver for me. She said she had postnatal depression with her little one. And she said she regularly comes to the cafe just as somewhere that's easy to get to and welcoming. And she said it's really made a difference for her. And, I said, that's really nice. And because if she didn't recognise me on social media, we never would have got that feedback.
No.
And I think, so it helps people realise that we're real people behind the business.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to look at the big corporates and they are just numbers. But small family businesses, there are real people working there. And I have an incredible team. We have a great team on the farm, at the Willow Barn, and they all are invested in helping make it work.
Yeah.
Because they can see how hard we try for it. And, we are a big family trying to work together. And do well out of it.
And we will talk about something that the government's brought in, or that's imposing, that we will talk about in a moment. But going back to that point, I saw the other day that you had a special offer on the breakfast, and I was almost tempted to get in the car and come over myself. It was just, I think it was one of your little ones had the plate in front of her, and it's like looked very, very tempting, very tempting. So if you're a foodie, then make sure you follow as well. Right. I did say we'd leave it towards the end because I want to talk about all the great things that you've got going on and all the hard work you've been putting in. Yet, amongst all of these hard things, floods, COVID, all these bits and pieces, we now have a family farm tax on the horizon.
Yeah.
To the listener at home, explain what this
it is quite complicated, and I think I used to be a solicitor, so at least I have a basic understanding of these things, which perhaps other people don't, and it is a complicated area. When somebody dies, the value of their estate is valued, and you pay inheritance tax at 40% of that value. Since sometime in the early 1990s, I believe, there's been agricultural property relief and business property relief that essentially enable farms and family businesses, it's not just farms, it's family businesses as a whole, to qualify for an IHT relief. So you don't pay inheritance tax on that portion. How it particularly relates to farming is that we have a huge shop floor. We farm about 500 acres, and we need that 500 acres. We're scraping through it with 500 acres. We could do with a bit more, to be honest.
Right.
But we need that 500 acres. Without it, the farm won't function because it would cost you too much to buy in what you're otherwise producing yourself for the cows. And if we have to pay a 40% inheritance tax charge on any portion of the farm, we would have to sell something to produce that money, which would mean the farm wouldn't be economically viable, and so we have to sell the farm.
Yeah.
So this is the story for farms up and down the country. The government's figures say 500 farms will be impacted. And that's just not the case at all. They haven't used the right figures. And this is because they use the figures looking at agricultural property relief. The number of estates in recent years who have claimed agricultural property relief to get the relief on IHT. What they failed to look at is the use of business property relief. And most farms will make good use of business property relief as well.
Yeah.
Because it's an ongoing business that's being passed on, you can claim that relief as well. But under the government's changes that were announced in the budget, they're scrapping those for you. And they're a bit naughty because they've sort of backtracked a little bit, saying, oh, well, they've said there's a £1 million exemption. And they say, well, actually, it's a £3 million exemption by the time you add in, a married couple and various things. But most farms aren't owned by a married couple. Because of the way the tax laws have worked for the last however long, farmers have done their succession planning, allowing for the existing rules. The farm is owned by one person, presumably the person who's inherited it from their family.
Yeah.
And to allow a relief of just £1 million is just not enough at all.
No.
Estate agency, how many houses around here are worth £1 million with just a little bit of a paddock.
Yeah, and you've got 240 acres and all else that goes with it.
And so it does, on paper, it adds up to a huge sum of money. But that doesn't mean anything to us unless we were to sell it. And we don't want to sell it. We want to keep farming. My husband is a farmer through and through. He would be absolutely devastated if he had to give up the farm. And of course, if you were to sell that farmland, you would pay tax on it. You'd have CGT to pay.
Yep.
There'd be SDLT to pay by whoever buys it. There is taxes to pay on that if you sell it. But farmers don't want to sell the land. It's a value on paper.
Yep.
And you need that value to be able to function. And this is why I describe it as a shop floor. Other businesses, you don't need anywhere near as much capital to make your business function. I mean, you look at the machinery we have. We have a JCB loader, which is incredibly important. That's used throughout the day for various jobs. We've got loads of different tractors, forage wagon, ploughs, all those, the basic machinery that you need to operate. And that's us as a dairy farm. Obviously, you can look at the value of combine harvesters and things these days. And for an arable farm to be valuable, I mean, you're looking at almost probably 4 times as much land as we have. You need about 1,000 acres really to make it work as an arable farm.
Yeah.
And so because of how farming, you're working in an industry where the product is such a low valued commodity, we can't put our prices up because it's controlled by the supermarkets. Yeah. So they want us to pay a tax, and they say, well, you've got 10 years to pay it. Great, we still don't have the money.
No, of course not. No.
And, they say, well, you need to do your succession planning. Who can plan for when somebody's going to die? And
like you said, that's the point that people need to realise. You pay a tax when you sell your property. That will happen. But you're not selling. Nothing's being sold. It's just going to get passed from Tristan's dad to Tristan and to you guys. But you're going to pay a tax at that point, which, for numbers that Tristan shared on a post the other day, say it's 3 million. You got your 1 million relief. You've got a £2 million amount there. They're going to take tax on, and 400 grand I think was the figure that he mentioned, and that may even be lowballing it. It might be underneath where it could be, but that's a significant thing. If it happened in 2 months' time, it's just mental.
And that's it. And they've introduced it so with just a year and a half warning. But you've got the 7-year gift exemption for IHT planning. So anybody now is completely stuck. And the IHT advice has always been to keep hold of the farmland until you die.
Yeah.
You can't gift it if you're still making use of the farm. Tristan's dad still lives on the farm in one of the farmhouses. So he can't gift it to Tristan because he still gets a benefit out of the farm. There's so many complications to it that it's easy for people who don't understand it to say, oh, why don't you just do this? Lots of people say, why don't you put it in a trust? There's many reasons why you don't want to put it in a trust. It's expensive, it's complicated. It means the control of the business in the future will be really, really complicated as well. And also you can't put things in a trust for the purpose of avoiding IHT. It is a really complicated area, but the bottom line is that family farms like ours will be forced to sell up. And if that happens, where is the food going to come from?
Yeah.
There's a farm down the road just the other side of between Powick and Malvern that's been sold recently, and they're filling it with solar panels. This is prime agricultural land right next to a main road, so easy to get things in and out of, and it's going to be filled with solar panels. that's not making food for people. So what are we going to do? Import all this food?
Yeah, I was going to say 2.5-year-old cows or 18 months or injected with whatever they want to send over.
That's it, exactly. And so it really does raise questions about what do we want as a nation in terms of our food security to be able to feed ourselves. With the Ukraine war, wheat prices increased significantly because of not being able to get wheat out of the Ukraine, which is a major producer of wheat around the world. Where do we want this food to come from if we either can't get it in ourselves and also just aren't producing enough ourselves? Are we going to be importing our beef from Brazil, where, you've got deforestation and all sorts taking place in a completely unsustainable way of farming? British farmers are the highest, farm to the highest welfare standards in the world. We are doing a brilliant job at producing, increasing our sustainability. And if you're importing food from elsewhere around the world, you haven't got that control.
No. Yeah, from field to plates a lot quicker locally as well. Get that on a plane and send it back.
It's much better for you. Think of when our milk round, the furthest we deliver is about 7 miles away.
Right.
As the crow flies. So it means our milk, we only sell about 5% of our milk on the milk round. But for that 5%, it's travelling no further than 7-8 miles. Whereas if you buy your milk in the supermarket, just as an example, we used to be with a different dairy. We switched a couple of years ago. But the milk tanker would come to collect the vast majority of our milk, would start up in Wales, on the edge of Wales, and head down to Aylesbury.
Wow, okay.
So he was travelling a few hundred miles every day. So that milk because it travels from farm to dairy to be processed.
Yep.
And then from the dairy, where it's in its bottles, it will then head out to various warehouses and then out to your supermarket. It's expensive transportation that's completely unnecessary when you can get some of this food from your neighbouring farm.
Yeah. Making a very strong case for shopping local, isn't it? Very, very strong case for shopping local. I want to say thank you for coming on. And I think the kind of the payback from anyone who's watching or listening to this is you've got to go and have a look at what there is on your doorstep. Really, it's daft to miss out on this. We talked about Bennetts ice creams as well. You're the milk in the Bennetts ice creams as well, and that's family related business.
Yeah, so Bennetts ice cream, the factory is on our farm.
Yeah,
it is run by my husband's cousins. Very family orientated as well, and they use our milk. Yeah. And it's another fantastic local business in Worcestershire producing food that's very well loved. We're very lucky to have the best ice cream, I think.
Yes, indeed. So I hope my research did you proud. Is there anything I've missed though? Is there anything else that people should know about your fantastic setup up there? Is there anything that I've not got on this long list?
I don't think so. I think that covers everything. The idea, it all stems back to the farm, and all our diversifications link back to the farm. The glamping is making use of an area of the farm that we couldn't otherwise make use of. The cafe uses our milk and it helps promote the milk round to other businesses and families. And then the event side tags on with that as well, and that ties in with the glamping. The weddings, a lot of our guests stay in the yurts for the weekend. They all tie in together, but it all feeds back to the farm, and that really is at the heart of what we're doing. We want to keep farming, and we have tried so hard over the last few years to build up diversifications that will support the farm and help us keep farming, which is why it's a kick in the teeth when the government currently tell us farmers just need to work a bit harder.
Yeah, not really helping the working families, are they? No, not at all. Just thinking, we've obviously talked about your social media, but you'll have a website that all this is available to click onto. So do you want to just quickly go through the website just so people know?
Okay, so we've got bennettswillowbarn.co.uk.
Yep.
We then have a different website for the weddings as well, because there's so much niche information on there. So that's bennettswillowbarnweddings.co.uk. The main farm account website is bennettsfarms.co.uk, and that's where you can find out information about how we farm and also sign up for our milk round. We deliver across Worcester and Malvern 6 days a week. You'd get delivery 2 days a week, depending on where you live, will determine the days. And also information about beef is on there, and then worcesterglamping.co.uk for our yurts as well.
Amazing. We will put all of those in the show notes. And finally, I did tell you this question's coming. What's one thing that you love about Worcestershire?
I love being so close to a lovely historic city, but having the Malvern Hills right on the doorstep. as I said, I didn't grow up around here, but I soon came to love it. I think I love that from where we are on our farm, we can walk into Worcester. It's a lovely city, with the cathedral there and all its history. But then you've got the beauty of the Malvern Hills, and it gets even more rural when you.
I bet you've got some nice views of the hills from where you are as well.
We do, yeah. When you can see them on a blue day.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Steph, thank you ever so much for coming on. So Bennetts Farm, you've got to go over to Bennetts Farm and go to the cafe, go to the yurts. There's loads to do over there. So thank you once again, Steph, for joining us on Just Local podcast. And if you are interested in more of these, please give us a like and a follow, and we'll make sure you're up to date with the next people coming on.